Anytime you're working on a car that's 30 plus years old, like the Fiero here, you'll be working on a project and all of a sudden you'll notice something that doesn't look too bad, but you start picking at it and you get sucked into the rust rabbit hole. That's exactly what happened to me recently on the Fiero when I was working on upgrading the cold air intake. And I'll show you exactly what happened and how far down that hole we went next.
Toys for life.
Guys, when we were doing the cold air intake video, I noticed this rust through on the structural part of the strut tower. So we're going to try to cut that out and repair the metal because it's the right thing to do. So far, I've just unbolted the brake caliper and hung it out of the way. You never want to hang it on those hoses. And I'm going to try to drop the strut assembly down to get myself a little more room between the strut and the lower frame rail so I can get in there and cut and weld. So now we're ready. At the top here, we're just removing these 3 bolts, and that'll allow this assembly to drop down, hopefully, so we have enough room to do our work. So I'm going to go ahead and use a body pick hammer to pick away at this like a woodpecker and just see the extent of the rust damage. Now, while it might look like I'm doing more harm than good, what I'm really doing is identifying the rot that I'm going to need to address. It's becoming obvious in a hurry that this is going to be some serious cutting, grinding, welding. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the whole strut tower by just removing the link ball joint and then down here, the main nut. That'll give us a ton more room to work because we got to do this right. Hitting it with the hammer makes it deflect just enough to let go. Now I'm going to remove the lower nut that holds the spindle to the lower A-arm ball joint, and that should allow me to pull the whole strut assembly out. I always put these nuts back on so I don't lose them. Make sure you take the time now to go ahead and tape up areas that you don't want rust and dirt to get into. I'm going to use duct tape here, and then I'm going to use just some old towels to protect the ball joints. There. Now we're going to tackle this some more. Let's see how much rust there really is inside there. This is the kind of thing you run into all the time with older cars and even older houses, things like that. It starts out just looking a little suspicious, and the next thing you know, and this is going to get a lot worse. You got to be willing to tackle problems like this, or really, if you're not, stick to late model vehicles. But we've got time on our hands. I have a fondness for this little Fiero, and we're going to cut this out and fix it right. One reason this is so bad right here is because this is where GM sandwiched a couple pieces of metal together with spot welds, and that just holds salt water and dirt and moisture, and you can see the result. It's a common manufacturing technique, so nothing against the Pontiac Fiero, and this is a 35-year-old chassis. Things like this happen if they're exposed to the elements. You can see the spot welds here. There's only a few of them. You want to cut out, obviously, the rust holes and anything that's really thin that you can't weld to at a minimum. This is not a show car, so I'm just repairing this structurally so it'll hold up to the abuse I'm going to inflict upon it. If it was a show car, that makes things a little more challenging because you want it to look absolutely stock when you're done. Now I've got the hole the size that I want it. It's time to break out the sheet metal and the snips and cut a patch panel that can be welded in. Guys, that's going to do it for part 1. In part 2, we'll break out the welder, the grinder, the sandblaster, and of course, the rattle can. Guys, if you like the video, please hit that thumbs up and subscribe below. And as always, thanks for watching.